Hello and welcome back to Power Skills with Janna. I'm Janna Jones, your leadership development specialist, coach, and mentor. And I'm so glad you're here today as we're diving into a leadership superpower that is more relevant than ever: influence without authority. Let's be real. In today's world of matrix organizations, cross functional projects, and hybrid teams, your ability to lead doesn't depend on your title. 67% of organizational work happens through influence, not authority. Thanks, HBR. So, whether you're influencing peers, key stakeholders, or even your boss's boss, authority is dead. Influence is how we can thrive. Today, we will leverage Robert Cialdini's 7 Principles of Persuasion. His book, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, is still one of my favorites. And over 40 years on, it is still, in my opinion, the gold standard of ethical influence, backed by decades of psychological research, and is still widely relevant in our digital age. As always, we will explore the science behind why these principles work, share stories of leaders who turned resistance into collaboration, and give you the practical tools that you can use any day of the week. Let's turn you into someone people want to engage with on this wonderful journey, one intentional conversation at a time. Now, while I have your attention, if I might make a request, please, if you are loving these episodes, please hit subscribe wherever you listen from. It means the absolute world to me. Or perhaps you might like to share with a colleague. That helps us to reach more switched on leaders, much like yourself. All right, let's jump straight into it. Why influence without authority matters, because as always, I want to start with the why. In traditional hierarchies, you told people what to do, but today, 67% of organizational work happens through influence, not authority. Project managers have to influence engineers that are not their direct reports. Sales leaders collaborate with marketing peers. Senior executives need to seek buy-in from resistant board members. Robert Cialdini is, in my opinion, one of the world's leading experts on influence. His book, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, that I mentioned before, is still just as mind-changing 40 years later. If you haven't read it, I would thoroughly recommend it. He identifies 7 universal principles that resonate with us and also work because they're wired into our human psychology. Neuroscience helps us to explain this because when people feel coerced, their amygdala triggers resistance. Cortisol floods their system, shutting down cooperation. But when you tap into the principles of influence and persuasion, oxytocin, our trust hormone, and dopamine for reward are activated, which help us to create genuine commitment. I was working with a project manager who was stuck. Her cross-functional team were ignoring her requests and deadlines slipped. When she learned these principles, her project success rate jumped from 40% to 92%. Key stakeholders started seeking out her input. That's a pull rather than a push. And that shift can change everything. That's the power of principled influence. It creates collaboration that authority cannot force. In today's complex world, where 85% of job success comes from working with others, these principles of influence are not just tools. They may well be your competitive advantage. So principle 1 is reciprocity, because people feel obligated to return favors. The research shows that this is one of the most powerful influence principles. You might start by giving first, offering help or support without strings. For example, I reviewed your proposal and thought that I'd share some insights that might help to make it an easier yes. Then make it personal. Tailor your giving to their needs. For example, I know you've been under the pump lately. Did you want me to handle that vendor call for you? And also time it right, because small favors create immediate obligation. You might say, let me grab your coffee while we work this through. The immediate buy-in, it may be more for the coffee than the working session, but you'll get both as a result. People often think of the reciprocation rule as a slimy sales tactic, or ingratiating themselves or an obligation. But when it's leveraged with good intention and respect, like the examples that I just shared, that is absolutely not the case at all. For example, there was a time when I needed budget support via social process for approval. So instead of going in and taking what I wanted, I walked into the lead team that was struggling with their reporting, helped them find the data points and interdependencies for the decision that they needed to make. And I noted that I just had to do the same for the budget proposal that I was bringing to them. Aligned support in 15 minutes, honestly. And I must add, that wasn't intentional but circumstantial. The real reflection on that initial buy-in and engagement when I had to ask for budget flexibility on the same leadership project, and they offered me more resources to extend the work's impact. When I make a proposal, it usually comes with three options, one of which I really want and I will lean towards in my proposal. Never have I been offered so much more than my initial request. Was it entirely reciprocity? No, it was also great work that had value in it as well. But people often won't remember much of what you say. They do, however, remember how you make them feel. So when you make them feel valued and supported and connected, you are showing your value in return, and you never know where that may lead you and the work that you can do. Perhaps you might even like to make it habitual, creating a give first habit, considering 3 people in your network who you might like to help each week without asking anything back. Principle 2 is social proof, because people follow what others do. Robert Cialdini found that we are 3.5 times more likely to act when we see others doing it. Goodness, this has so many implications. But in the case of our own leadership, perhaps you might like to showcase your success stories. This team or leader has adopted this approach and experienced more career development, growth, and satisfaction in the last 6 months than they had in the previous 3 years, for example. Name influential supporters as well. So, for example, Sarah from operations and Tom from legal both came together to align on this way forward as being mutually beneficial while meeting our duty of care requirements. This helps to reassure people that they aren't going out on an uncharted limb, and therefore makes it easier for them to align. Leverage data as evidence. I don't know about you, but I tend to work with very technical leaders, and therefore data reigns supreme. For example, in a proposal, I might say that this type of programmatic approach typically generates a 4.6 satisfaction rating with leaders, acknowledging that they saw an incremental shift in engagement over the 6-month following implementation. Numbers can create great momentum, but don't forget anecdotal evidence and feedback to tell the story in a more well-rounded and balanced way. I was working with a leader who needed to help an internal product launch. Instead of demanding an asset build, she shared with comms a template that 5 other product managers had successfully used and what their results were. The comms team not only created the assets, they made them into a company standard. I mean, that was an easy yes, but social proof really can turn skeptics into advocates. A quick tool that may be of value that I've seen a few leaders utilize recently is the 3-3-3 method, or the rule of 3. That may be these 3 things that you can double down with: 3 success stories, 3 influential supporters, and 3 data points to really make it an easy yes and to get full buy-in. I'm going to call this one step 3 because I'll cover 2 principles here: scarcity and urgency. The scarcity principle is that people want what is rare or time limited. Cialdini proved that limited availability increases perceived value by 200%. Now, to all my leaders that are in back-to-back meetings, I am not sure that's quite what he meant. Instead, perhaps you might like to highlight the limited opportunities. For example, this quoted price is only available for the next 4 weeks, and our processes usually take significantly longer. How can we make this happen and get better at adaptability and agility at the same time? Or show the lost opportunities. If we don't align now, we'll miss the Q1 launch window and be significantly delayed in cascading to our teams for alignment. Or create exclusive access. For example, this pilot is limited to 3 teams, and I really thought your team may value being one of those. I actually worked with a senior leader who needed engineering's buy-in for a feature change. Applying scarcity and urgency principle, he said, we have 2 weeks before our competitor launches. 3 other teams are already testing this. How can we do it better? Engineering prioritized his request over 12 others. Scarcity and urgency create action. Just remember not to use it too often. Remember the story of the boy who cried wolf. Step 4 is to establish authority and consistency. This one is definitely a both and situation. So principles 4 and 5 are authority and consistency because people value expertise that they can trust. So it's important to stick to your commitments, do what you say you will do, practice what you preach, and all those other great sayings that regularly fall by the wayside in favor of do as I say. For example, you might start by demonstrating expertise, either overtly, like saying, based on my 10 years of leading similar projects, I anticipate the following, or you could do it more subtly, such as, I really appreciate you raising that. In my experience with previous projects, I haven't seen it happen, but we can certainly add it as a consideration just in case. Seek small commitments. You might say, we don't have to have all the answers right now, but can we agree that this is worth exploring? Small yeses lead to big yeses. And reference credible sources. For example, Gartner's latest report shows this, or our employee experience data from last year and our exit interviews are telling us this. There was a time when I needed C-suite support for a very risky initiative. I led with high-performing teams are a priority for us, right? That was an easy yes and part of the organization's vision. Then I shared the engagement survey and exit interview data and some subsequent HBR and Gartner data that confirmed the solution that I was proposing increased retention by 27%. The CEO became the champion of that project. Consistency also creates momentum. In this one, I also started with the why and aligned on the purpose. Simon Sinek's TED Talk on just that is incredible if you haven't seen it yet. As an additional tip, there's something to remember called the yes ladder. So 3 progressively larger commitments leading to your ask can help to build increasing buy-in from the very start. Step 5 or principles 6 and 7, connect through liking and unity respectively. Because people say yes to those they like and they identify with, and it may be helpful then to find common ground. For example, I wanted to connect with you on this because I know that you're also incredibly passionate about cultivating psychological safety in your team. You may also give genuine compliments, such as, I really valued how you handled that stakeholder meeting. It was great to be able to align on a way forward, even if not everyone initially agreed. And create a language of we rather than I. So how can we progress this work together? We are not just manufacturing buy-in when we ask questions like this. We are creating unity as well. For example, an energy leader I was working with needed operations buy-in for a sustainability initiative. Instead of pushing data, he started with acknowledging we're both really committed to our employees' future. He shared a personal story about his kids' generation, knowing this leader's kids were similar ages as well. Operations became his biggest advocate. Unity really can create unbreakable alliances. All right, let's take some time to make it real now. Here are some 5 power practices to amplify your influence that you can start today. Reciprocity first. Perhaps you can help one person before asking for anything this week. Social proof prep. Prepare 3 success stories for your next influence conversation or presentation. Share that anecdotal evidence and feedback. Scarcity statement. Add one time-sensitive element to your next request. And perhaps you may want to leverage that yes ladder that I spoke about, getting 3 small commitments before your big ask. And finally, unity connection. Find one piece of common ground in every influence conversation, engagement, or interaction. Let's pause and take the time here to reflect. Perhaps you may like to grab a pen if it is safe for you to do so, essentially if you're not driving. If you are, perhaps just think through these and dig deep. Which of the 7 principles is your strongest, or where you feel your more natural and authentic strengths stem from? Is it giving first? Is it finding unity and connection with others? What's your personal strength? Who do you need to influence this week? And which principle may be valuable to utilize as a starting point? Is there perhaps somewhere in your work that you've been waiting for authority instead of leading through influence? What's one relationship where giving first could change everything? This is not sleazy sales or about fulfilling a personal agenda. You can leverage these opportunities as your stepping stones to effortless ethical influence. So, your challenge this week, should you choose to accept it, pick one person you need to influence without using your title or through direct reporting lines. Using Cialdini's 3-step influence formula. 1, reciprocity. Give something first. That may be insights, help, or resource. 2, social proof. Share 2 to 3 success stories or data points. And 3, scarcity and unity. Add urgency and common ground. For example, while we have this window and we're both committed to ABC, perhaps we could. As an example, you may approach a colleague and say something like, I reviewed your Q4 forecast yesterday and think there may be an opportunity to strengthen it with some other data that we've been looking at. Do you want to see? There's your reciprocity and buy-in. 3 other regions are using this approach to beat their targets by 12%. Social proof and data. If we can align on a way forward together by Friday, we can secure that extra budget in the following week's review and make Q4 our best quarter yet. Scarcity and unity. I know that makes leading through influence sound like a quick conversation, and it is so much more than that. But we all have to start somewhere, and these brief opportunities can shift everything and make it valuable common practice. Always search for that low-hanging fruit. For bonus points, write down your plan to take on this challenge and share your commitment with a colleague to help make it stick. That first conversation and then those outcomes that you will likely achieve, that should be like super glue. And on that note, thank you so much for joining me. Leading through influence and persuasion isn't a manipulation. The 7 principles are the psychology of human cooperation. In a world where 67% of work happens through influence, these principles put into practice will give you an unfair advantage. Cialdini himself said, influence is not about getting people to do what you want. It's about helping them see why what you want is also what they want. On that note, if you value this episode or you think someone else may, please do share it with them. That helps us to reach more switched on leaders like yourself and propels me forward to keep creating and sharing this content with you for free. If you would value doing any more work together, that part is usually free, by the way, but please do not hesitate to connect with me on LinkedIn at Power Skills Development or visit www.powerskillsdevelopment.com. While you're there, you can subscribe to our free fortnightly Power Pause, That is a little leadership nudge straight to your mailbox. Until next time, stay curious, stay intentional, influence wisely, and empower powerfully, one connection at a time. Have a fabulous rest of your week.